Hi, today we're going to talk about the reading book. And
Okay, this doesn't have a front cover because it's been through 6 children. And as you can see, it's stained, it's warped, it's whatever. It's the Teach Your Child to Read in 100 Easy Lessons. It's by Engelman, Haddix, and Bruner. Now, it talks in the beginning of the book about how the way of teaching reading is changing, and that they still feel like that the phonic method is the best method. And so what they've done is put together a book, and I'll show you a little bit about how it works in the beginning in just a minute. But you'll see here that on every page there's a bunch of red ink and a bunch of black ink. What it is literally 100 lessons, and they're 2 to 3 pages long, okay? And what it is that the black is either what you do or what the child says, and the red is what you're supposed to say. Like, very literally, number 1, point to the M. That's in parentheses in black. Then, I'm going to touch under this sound and say the sound. That's what I'm supposed to say. And then it says, touch the first ball of the arrow, move quickly to the second ball, and hold 2 seconds. That's what I say. Then release the point. So what it's telling me to do is point to the M and go, as I run my finger across it. So, one little caveat here at the beginning, and that is that I don't say every word it tells me to say. I don't know if it's a good idea for you to say every word it tells you to say. It would be boring, and it would be, I don't know. I don't do that. What I do is I look over, oh, this is what we're going to do. We're going to reinforce M, and so I just paraphrase it and go through the exercise myself. I think the kids would get really bored and annoyed if I forced us to go through each lesson with me saying every single word. So, Seth, you kind of explain what happens when we do a lesson.
right here, where is it?
Okay, we don't have time to find a certain lesson.
Okay.
Just tell us what happens when we do a lesson.
We read the words that.
Okay, we start out every lesson, and lots of times we learn a new sound, right?
Mm-hmm.
In this lesson, we don't learn a new sound. In this lesson, this is lesson 29, we learn the new sound. What's this one?
Ooh.
That's right. And then it'll reinforce the other sounds that you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he'll go through and reinforce those sounds, and then it'll go through simple words that he's read once, maybe several times, and reinforce them so he can remember them. So what would you remember? A couple of these words.
Sad.
Try again.
Sid.
What does this sound make?
E. Feed.
Good.
Run.
Good. Okay, so I'm going to give you a few tips on how to use this book to the best advantage. The way that it's structured is that every single letter has a specific sound, and as you may see on here, for the word seed, it's got an E with a line above it to show that it's a long E. So it'll introduce different vowels, and as it introduces those, it'll do something special to it so that the child knows when they see an E with a line on it, it says its name. If they see an O with a line on it, it says its name, right? If you see an A with a line on it, it says A instead of A. So then you go through, you review all this stuff, and then what happens at the end of the lesson? I don't know who told me to do, maybe the book recommends this. I think the book recommends it actually. And I followed it with all 6 of my children. They've learned to read with this book. And it recommends that you get a piece of paper and you hold it over the picture. At the end of every lesson is a little mini story, and they get longer and longer and longer. And the thing that I love about it is that near the end of the book, the words get smaller and smaller and smaller, and the stories get longer, so that near the end, when they're doing these stories here at the back, also a lot of the little clues that they use at the beginning to tell the kids what sounds to make fall off. So now here at the end, you've got this long story with little words, and there's no long E, there's no lines above any of the letters, there's all the correct punctuation, and so little by little, over 100 lessons, it transitions from teaching them just how to say the certain sounds, and then they start to memorize, oh, that's this word, that's this word, that's this word, and they memorize the sounds. So at the end of the lesson, you cover up the picture, the child reads the story, and then you work on reading comprehension with them. Now sometimes I like the questions they ask and sometimes I don't. But they'll say, ask them this and ask them this and ask them this. What are you going to find when we take the cover off the picture, right?
And see this? This is a short story. And when you read it gets longer and longer until you're all the way done with the book right here.
Yep.
And it gets all longer and longer.
So is that fun? Do you like when we cover up the picture and then you have to guess what it's going to look like?
But Mom, this is something that I really like, what the kids can do.
What?
That at the end of the story, we can, after I see the picture, we can do this. We can you know those things that I did the letter?
Oh.
We can put something on and then we can draw it, and then we can take it off and we can send it to someone.
That's right.
And that's what kids can do.
That's a great idea. So I wanted to reinforce the writing part. From the very beginning of the book, it's trying to teach reading and writing, and they'll write one letter every day or several letters. They're not always super hip on that, and so I wanted to reinforce them writing, and so I just had an idea. Probably everybody in the world has a friend or a family member that doesn't live nearby, and of course we have lots of them. And so even here from the beginning, they don't get a story and a picture for probably about 10 lessons in. Then they start having a story and a picture. Once they start having a picture, in those first few lessons, they learn quite a few words. Let's see when it gets to the first picture. I guess it must be here on lesson 13. Is that the first picture?
I don't know.
Yep, it looks like the first picture comes in lesson 13. It says what, Seth?
They can do and then after they learn see me eat, they can say see me eat.
That's right. So I don't know how well you can see this where you are, but there's an arrow on the bottom and little dots for each of the sounds, and the long E on there. On the eat, it has an E with a long E and a little tiny A and a T. Well, over time that A gets bigger and the line over the E falls off, and eventually they learn that EAT is eat. But at the beginning they're just going completely on sounds. So right here is this first picture that goes with lesson 13, the first time you get a picture. So what Seth is talking about, my idea for encouraging them to write when they're done with the lesson, is that I would get tracing paper and put it over the picture, and he would trace it. Sometimes I'd help him, and we'd trace it onto some kind of, I don't know, it could be cardstock or it could be colored paper or whatever, and we would trace it onto the picture, onto the paper, and then he would write out his lesson for the day. So he would write see me eat next to it so that somebody else could see what his lesson was about. Maybe you don't want to do that every single day, but it's definitely encouraging for them when they know somebody that lives far away and they're excited for that person to get it. He has a Nana that he really loves, and she loves him, and she loves to get letters when she writes the stories that he's reading to her. What?
See here, it's lesson 14. Not lesson 15.
This is the end of lesson 13. Then the new lesson starts. So yeah. So at the very beginning of the book, it shows you exactly, it gives you recommendations for how to have them write their letters the best way they recommend. I never used a lot of that. You could. And then there's a guide, because you may forget. This is the order in which it's called the pronunciation guide. This is the order in which the letters are introduced, and it tells you how you're supposed to pronounce it with them, and it gives you an example of, just because O has several pronunciations, when it's introduced the first time with just a plain O, we're pronouncing it ah, like an ox. And so ah will be the sound, and all the words that are built with this sound until a new O is introduced are with ah. And so these are all the sounds, so that they're introduced to more than 26 letters because they're introduced to lots of different sounds. And then by the time they're done, and here's the thing about this book too, and Seth is right to this point. Almost all my, well, to this point, 5 out of my 6 children, we've gone through this book with some, I mean, when I did it with Micah and Avery, they were 3 years apart, but Avery is more academic and she followed along and she kind of taught herself to read while I worked with Micah. So it just kind of depends on the child, but some were more enthusiastic than others. I know one mother who gave an incentive of some kind of book or outing or something every 10 lessons that they had done. You could give some kind of prize if you have a child that's not excited. But once they know how to do it, most of the time, 1 lesson a day is a great pace. It takes probably 15 or 20 minutes, and you don't have to do much else, really, literally. Pick up the book, do a lesson for 15 or 20 minutes, and then in, I don't know, a few months, I'm not super like religious and always on my game and doing it every single day. So Seth and I started a year ago, and he's halfway through the book. I haven't been as diligent about doing it every day with him as I did with some of the older kids. I've been extra busy this last few months with some of my older children's things. But all my children, just one second, bud. All my children have gotten about halfway through the book with stories. Have you read a story this long?
I read a story longer than that.
Yeah, so when they get to about halfway through the book, this is lesson what? Lesson 58, yeah, halfway through the book. And they have stories about that long. All my children have wanted to go start trying to read other things. And so usually what happens is that I keep reading them board books, and then they start to notice that they recognize words that are in those books. By that time they've got the, and, a, cat, things like that. They've got those words down. And it's really exciting to discover that those are words not just in their reading book, but they're words in the real world. They're words that they are going to see everywhere all the time. And it becomes really exciting. And so what I do is let them read whatever words they know and whatever words they want to try reading. And then we'll go into other books. They'll read 4 or 5 pages and then be done. I don't force them to read other whole books. Anyway, eventually they work them. None of my children have finished the whole book. And I don't force them to finish the whole book. When they feel ready and they want to try reading other things, I'm all about that. And so we try reading whatever they feel like reading, and then we keep writing letters to people that we know to encourage writing, and they've all learned to read just great with this one book. What?
A dog, and a bug. A bug ate, and a dog sat on a log.
Yeah. Okay, we don't have time to read the whole thing, but that was awesome. So this is lesson 58. He's doing great, and you've been reading some pages in some other books now, haven't you? Yeah, that's awesome. And then they love discovering the picture at the end and imagining what it's going to look like. The stories are silly. They're usually about animals and bugs and things like that, and they do silly things, right? And lots of the stories, and then they have a picture. So, teach your child to read in 100 Easy Lessons. Can't recommend it highly enough. I've taught 5 children to read with it, and it's always done us well. It's a great, great way to teach reading to your kids. See you next time.